Welcome to Halton SENDIASS podcast, your easy to understand guide to some of the most common queries that we get asked when it comes to SEND, special educational needs and disabilities. I'm your host, Sharon English, and together with my colleague Emma Surgeons from Halton SENDIASS, we're here to empower you to make informed decisions for you or your child. In this episode, we're talking all things education, health and care plans, also known as EHCPs. This process is known and referred to as an EHC needs assessment. We're going to look at the process itself, some of the law and regs around that, and also a few myths and common questions that we at SENDIASS often get asked. For this episode today, I'm joined by Emma Sargent, who is a caseworker here at Halton SENDIASS. Emma, how long have you worked for Halton SENDIASS?
I've worked here for 6 years.
And what's your role? What do you do?
So I give information, advice and support to parents around anything SEND matters.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us today, Emma. So, who do we think this episode is useful for? Well, it's going to be useful for a range of people, especially those who are considering statutory assessment for an education, health and care plan. So that could be somebody coming into it for the very first time, or somebody that you know is going into the process. It could also be people who are going through the process already, and maybe also for those who've gone through the process who want to use this for reference. So let's get into the details. Emma, tell us a little bit about what is an EHCP.
An Education, Health and Care Plan, or EHCP, as they are also known, is a legal document that describes a child's or young person's special educational needs and or disability. They describe the help they will get to meet those needs. An EHC plan also describes any health or social care provision that's required. EHC plans are legal documents written by the local authorities.
So you mentioned there that it's a legal document. So I'm presuming then that law is involved.
Yes, there is law and guidance that covers the whole process. The main bits of law and guidance are Part 3 of the Children and Families Act of 2014 and the 2014 Special Educational Needs and Disability Regulation, also known as the SEND Regs, and the 2014 Special Educational Needs and Disability Code of Practice.
Wow, so there's some jargony bits of law and guidance there. So what is an education, health and care needs assessment? Should we try and explain that in a really straightforward way?
It is an assessment of need and to determine what support is required to meet each and every one of those child's needs.
Okay, Emma, so that's really clear. So why might an EHC plan be needed?
Well, we can't know if an EHC plan is needed until an assessment's been done. So the initial application is actually for an EHC needs assessment, not for a plan.
Okay, so just because I make an application doesn't mean I'll get a plan?
No.
No. Okay, thanks for that, Emma. So why might a plan be needed? How would we know whether it's the right time to consider an application for a needs assessment?
So it could be that your child's in a school or nursery, college, and the SEN support has been tried, and it's very clear that the child needs much more support. It's important to see if existing support can meet need. Maybe because the level of need is so high and the school is not able to put in necessary support. It could be that the school are putting in support but needs more funds or expertise, or that a special school may be better. It may be unclear what the child or young person's needs are.
So just very briefly, to cover that point, all schools have a duty to meet a child or young person's SEN needs. And these duties are really clearly set out in the Code of Practice and legally based duties on schools. So really, at this point, we need to be confident that the school are fulfilling their duties at SEN support level. You need to be talking to your school asking the SENCO questions around what the support looks like. What else might they consider? What are the next steps? What does the progress look like? Lots and lots of really good questions and exploration that together with the school you can talk about to make sure that actually the threshold for an EHCP needs assessment is perhaps appropriate and we are making an appropriate application. If there are duties remaining at school level that haven't been explored, then it's really important to talk to school about this and to find out more. So Emma, when can a request for an assessment be made?
A request can be made at any time.
So you don't have to wait until the child started school?
No, there's no need to wait until starting school. The Children and Families Act applies from birth to 25 years old.
And you don't have to wait until they're a few years behind their peers or a number of special educational needs cycles at that SEN support level have been undertaken at school?
Nope, there's no need to wait for any of that.
And Emma, do children and young people need to have a formal diagnosis to be able to make a needs assessment application?
No, the fact that you need a diagnosis is actually a myth. The child does need to have a special educational need, but not necessarily a diagnosis.
Okay, so what if you've previously had a refusal to assess? So you've already made one application, but the local authority decided that they wouldn't do an assessment. Do I have to wait 6 months before I ask again?
No, unless the local authority have carried out an assessment and decided that a plan was not necessary in this case, you must wait 6 months. There's another myth here. There is no legal requirement to show that a school has spent its SEN budget before an EHC needs assessment can be requested.
And who can make that request for an assessment?
Well, there's a myth that only schools can apply for an EHC needs assessment. This is incorrect. The people that can apply are parents, young person, or a person acting on behalf of the school setting. In fact, the Code of Practice does say that anyone else can bring a child or young person who has or may have SEND to the attention of the local authority, particularly where they think an EHC needs assessment may be necessary. This could include, for example, foster carers, health and social care professionals.
And we just said about a setting. So when we talk about settings, that could be a nursery, a school, a specialist school, a college. Any of those settings are able to do that. So now we're going to move back to when a request can be made. Do we have any advice around that, please, Emma?
We often advise parents and young people to speak to the setting about applying for a plan. You can also chat to SENDIASS for advice around making appropriate applications at the right time. The request has to be made in writing and we are able to share information on how to apply. We have template letters that parents and young people can use and also information explaining the whole process.
So that whole process, by law, should take no more than 20 weeks. The key points are you make the request and we call that week 0. So make a note of the date that that application is submitted to the local authority, as that becomes day 1 of a 20-week legal process. SENDIASS Halton have timelines that we can share with you. So as always, please do get in touch. And that way you're able to track the progress of your application and understand when you can expect to hear decisions and what the next part of the process will be. Emma, when is the first deadline following application at day 1 that you should expect to hear about your application and how it's getting on?
So once an application's been submitted, the local authority have 6 weeks to consider the application, request any further information and make a decision and let you know that outcome.
Fantastic. And is there any law and guidance around that decision making at this point as to whether the local authority should agree to an assessment? Is there any information that parents need to be aware of?
So the local authority can only make a decision based on the legal test for assessment. The legal test for assessment is after reviewing any evidence and any views expressed. If the local authority are in the opinion that A, the child has or may have SEN, and B, the child may need SEN provision in accordance with a plan, then they must assess.
So Emma, can anything else be considered? What about if a parent doesn't send enough evidence, or a parent doesn't show those SEN support plan due review cycles, or perhaps educational psychologists haven't consulted about the child? Is there anything else here that the local authority can use to say that they will refuse to make an assessment?
No, they can only apply the legal test to assessment when making a decision. If they were to hold a higher criteria, it would be seen as unlawful.
OK, that's great. Really clear. Thanks, Emma. So by week 6, we should have had a decision from the local authority. And this decision will either be yes, they agree to continue and make an educational health and care plan needs assessment, or no, having considered those 2 questions in law that Emma's just talked to us about, that actually they're going to refuse to assess. If it's a yes, that's great, and local authority will carry on with that assessment process. If it's a no, you can come to SENDIASS for some advice. You will consider the reasons that the local authority have given for their refusal to assess, and you will consider these in relation to those legal questions, remembering, of course, that anything above and beyond those 2 reasons in law and having listened to views, etc., will be an unlawful decision. SENDIASS can and will give you information, advice and support on how to challenge the refusal to assess decision should you decide that's the right thing to do. To help you decide if that's the right thing to do, you may wish to talk again to your school, setting, college, nursery about that SEN support offer that they have in place. Again, checking with them if there is anything else that they can do, what their next steps might be, and any gaps that there may be in the way that they are following their graduated approach. OK, Emma, so we've now got to week 6. And if you've had a yes to assess, what would the next few weeks look like?
So the assessment stage is a 10-week period. So in that assessment period, there'll be an educational psychology, full assessment, and any other professionals that are involved will be asked for their assessment input and their recommendations, and any other professionals that you feel may be needed.
OK, so if parents have professional reports, and they might be private or otherwise, and they are from the last year or so, would you advise that they share those at this point with the local authority assessment coordinator and ask that they're considered?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emma. So now we're approaching week 16, and this is when the local authority need to make the next decision. The first decision was that week 6 decision, whether they would carry out a needs assessment or not. And this decision is one that follows that assessment if it was agreed. The decision is, yes, the local authority agreed to issue an education, health and care plan, or no, the local authority refused to issue an educational health and care plan. If you receive a refuse to issue decision, this can be appealed at a SEN tribunal. And again, you are able to come to SENDIASS and we can give you information, advice and support around that process. So Emma, if the local authority agree to issue a plan, what will things look like now? What will happen next?
So parents should receive a draft EHC plan, and they should be given at least 15 days to go through that plan and make any written representations around any amendments that they would like or any changes at all.
So you mentioned there 15 days. Do you have to have finished all the process of checking it and having conversations about the plan within 15 days?
No, so it must be at least 15 days. So it's for you to start that conversation. If you need longer than that, you need to communicate with your coordinator.
And obviously this is a legal document, isn't it? So it is really important for everyone to know how to check that. Have we got anything at SENDIASS that we're able to share with parents that will help them with this process?
Yes, so we will be able to share all information, advice around checking a draft plan and give checklists for checking the plan and what they should look out for.
Oh, that's fantastic and really helpful. And obviously we really do recommend that you come to us at that point and request those checklists just so that you can really check the plans. Is there anything else, Emma, that happens in that 15 days that parents and families need to be aware of?
Yes, so parents are given their parental right to request a setting at this point, which is outlined in law, and we'll be able to advise around that.
Okay, so come to us again for advice about requesting a setting of your choice, which settings can be requested, and also here at SENDIASS we're able to tell you a little bit around how the local authority have to consider those requests and how that again is something that's framed within law. It's really important as well to understand that you do have a right to request mainstream education. The only reason in law that a local authority would not name a mainstream school would be that the attendance of the child or young person would be incompatible with the proficient education of others. And again, we have more detailed information around this that we can share with you. Emma, is there anything else that you can tell us about receiving a draft plan and what you can expect?
So section I of the plan, which will name a school, on the draft, this must be left blank. It's only when the plan is finalised will it name a school in section I.
So even if it's really clear where I want my child to go, or perhaps my child's already in a school and I want them to stay there, will my draft still have a blank section I?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a legal requirement for that to be blank. So we're now at that week 16 point. We have hopefully had an agreement to issue and we have received a draft plan. If you've talked to the local authority about any amendments, what might happen then?
So you may receive an amended draft plan.
Okay, and then can I make more comments on that amended draft plan, or is that just what I get?
You can ask for further amendments if you're still not happy, but you won't have a right of appeal until that plan is finalised. Okay,
so we have a finalised plan at 20 weeks. What happens if in that final plan the parent is still unhappy and that there are amendments outstanding that the parent has requested but the local authority have chosen not to make? Or, of course, now that the final plan names a setting, that the parent or young person doesn't agree with the setting named.
At that point, parent has a right of appeal and they have 2 months from the date of the final plan and the local authority letter issued to use their right of appeal. And section B, F and I are appealable.
Okay, so parents get that final plan. That comes with a letter from the local authority, which will be dated. And you've clearly said that there are timeframes there should a parent or a young person wish to appeal either the name of the setting or the contents of that plan. Again, parents can come to us for information, advice and support around that appeals process, and we can make sure that we get information to you. So that does bring us to the end of this podcast episode around Education, Health and Care Plan application and process. Thank you, Emma, for coming along and chatting to me. Have you got any advice for any parents listening?
Just come to us if they've got any questions or if they're worried about anything, and we can always offer support and advice.
Thank you, Emma. Yeah, we're always here and waiting for you to contact us. You can contact Halton SENDIASS, of course, by calling us. Our number is 0151 511 7733. And when you do that, if you leave your child's name, date of birth and your telephone number on our answer machine, we'll phone you back as quickly as we can, and usually always within 3 working days. We'll listen to your queries and then we can offer you some advice around those. If you prefer, you can email the inbox, and that's sendiass@halton.gov.uk. So that's SENDIASS @halton.gov.uk. There's also another great resource out there from IPSIA. IPSIA is the independent provider of special education advice, and they've got loads of guides, they've got helpline, lots more. So if you just head to their website, that's ipsia.org.uk, ipsea.org.uk. That's a really, really good resource to use as well. So as Emma said, don't be a stranger. No question is a silly question. Don't leave it till Friday and worry all weekend. Do get in touch if you need us. Thanks for listening, everyone.